So, Ro Khanna recently was smeared as a sexist by Nancy Pelosi and her little puppet minions, because Khanna came out and said, Dianne Feinstein, you got to move on. You got to step aside. This is getting wacky. She's roughly 400 years old, and because of her absence, right now, the judicial appointments from the Biden administration are totally stalled. They hit a brick wall because they need her vote, and she's not there. So Biden was doing a good job. It was one of the things he was doing that was good. He was really packing the courts with liberal justices, and now they hit a brick wall because of Dianne Feinstein. So that's a problem. The other thing is there was that bombshell story from ProPublica about Clarence Thomas and how corrupt he is, and how Harlan Crow is his billionaire sugar daddy, and he's paying for all different things for him and buying influence, and they want to open an investigation into this, but because Dianne Feinstein isn't there, they can't get it. Oh, God damn, she's getting in the way of all. This is just like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation, where she picked herself over the country and was like, yeah, I'm not going to retire, even though I've had pancreatic cancer. I've already outlived what the actuary tables say I should do. I'm going to stay for the Trump years. And then, of course, she died in the Trump years, and Trump got to replace her. Do the right thing. Nobody cares about you. It's about the ideas and policies you represent, the interpretation of the law that you represent. And if there's a far-right judge who gets your position, that's horrendous for everybody. And that leads directly to Roe versus Wade being overturned. So, and in the case of Dianne Feinstein, all these things she's holding up. So Ro Khanna comes out and states the obvious, hey, you got to step aside. Well, because of that, nobody ever told a man to step aside, ever. Yes, they did. Of course people do. What are you talking? People have told Biden to step aside. What are you talking about? Okay. So, Krystal Ball, full disclosure, she's my fiance. She will be my wife. Super biased. I don't know if there's anybody more biased than I am in this situation, right? But Krystal and Sagar interview Ro Khanna. They talk about the whole, you've been accused of being a sexist thing, and, respond to that, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the interview, they ask this question, which I think is a very fair question. It really is holding Ro Khanna accountable to his face. Watch this.
There was one other issue I wanted to ask you about with regard to speaking out and taking courageous stands. There was a letter that was just pushed by Congresswoman Tlaib and signed by a number of other squad members. I think there were seven signatories. Go ahead and put this up on the screen, calling for the DOJ to drop charges against Julian Assange and defend freedom of the press. Freedom of press, First Amendment, it's an issue that I think you have been very courageous on. You've spoken out against. I'm wondering why you didn't sign on to this particular letter.
I didn't read the details, but I support the position, and that's the important thing. I've supported the position publicly that we should not be prosecuting Julian Assange because it's overbroad, the charges against him. What I've said is you should be prosecuted for actually hacking or taking classified secrets, but not for the dissemination as a publisher. And I actually co-authored the Protection of Journalists Act, saying that people publishing things should not be prosecuted. So I don't know if I glanced at the letter and there was some sentence I didn't like or something, but in terms of the actual position, I've been very clear and very early on it.
So and that was why I was surprised, actually, that you weren't on the letter. So you'd be willing to take another look at it and consider signing on to it?
I'm happy to take a look at it, but my public position is pretty clear, which is I don't believe that Julian Assange should be prosecuted. Obama didn't prosecute him. It's an overbroad prosecution. You should not be prosecuting someone for publishing something if they're not involved in actually engineering or hacking the leaks.
Okay. So, look, the position is clear. He's saying don't prosecute Julian Assange. That's wonderful. I'm glad he's taken that position. But I will also say just sign the letter, right? Just sign the letter. Whatever sort of little issues you have with how it's framed, it's really irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. The more Congress people on that, the better. By the way, this is a point I made before as well. There was all this chatter on the right, the populist right, about how actually we're the ones who are going to stand up against the deep state, and we're the ones who are going to protect Julian Assange. And Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they all made a big show of this, right? And then here you have a letter supporting Julian Assange saying drop the charges, and where are they? Nowhere to be found. Why? Because the letter has a line which says we need to drop the Trump-era prosecution of Julian Assange. And they love Trump so much that they're like, no, I'm going to side with my daddy. I'm going to side with my dad, even though I've said that they should free Julian Assange. But since you said a bad thing about him in the letter, no, poop face, poop. So, in other words, there's no principles. Principles are gone. They're like, no, I'm not going to work with these progressives for something, even though I say I agree with it. So there are no right-wingers who signed on to this. It's all people from the Progressive Caucus, right? And Rokan, he's saying the right things here. Great. Yeah, but just sign on to it. Just sign on to it. Just sign on to it. And the other thing is, he talks about this is different than the leakers. This is just journalism. Honestly, you got to go a step further, though, right? Like, if somebody is leaking classified material, stuff that should actually be classified, right? Nuclear codes, positions of the troops on the battlefield during the fight. Like, these are all things, everybody understands why that should be top secret. Everybody gets that. Any reasonable person gets that. But when you talk about Edward Snowden or Julian Assange or Chelsea Manning or a lot of these people who do these leaks, they have a conscience and they're whistleblowers. In other words, they're saying this stuff shouldn't be classified in the first place. And you know what? In most cases, they are exactly correct. So even in those instances, you shouldn't go after those people. Again, the only people you should go after are people who leak, and it's stuff that really shouldn't be leaked. Even this recent guy who did the leaks that had a lot to do with the Ukraine war and the situation in Israel, he was no Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning or whatever, but even he was just doing it because he was trying to, like, impress his friends. So it wasn't like a nefarious intent or like working for an evil foreign actor. It was just trying to impress his friends. And again, most of that stuff probably shouldn't have been classified anyway, right? Maybe you can make an argument for some of it, but most of it, no. And so I think we need to be a lot more lenient even on those people. The leakers too, you need to be more lenient on. The ones who, I have a real issue with are like the politicians who take stuff that they shouldn't take. And then I'm telling you, man, if you find out Trump was selling that classified information to Saudi Arabia or others, then I would absolutely throw the book at him. I would. Right now, it looks like in the Trump classified documents case, he might go down for obstruction of justice because he wasn't complying when, the intelligence agencies were like, well, you got to hand this stuff over, man. You got to do it. He wasn't complying, so he might go down for obstruction. But look, I'm still convinced there might be evidence of, like, he has this stuff. What are you doing with all that stuff? Well, Jared Kushner got billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia. Trump got probably over $100 million for the Saudi golf tournaments. Like, there's more going on than what meets the eye there, right? They're not just giving them that money because they like him. And there was reporting that Jared Kushner shared classified information with MBS. So that's the real stuff that's like, wow, something should be done about this. But anyway, Roe, this is a good answer. You're saying the right things, but just sign on to the letter. I mean, the more the merrier, and hopefully it applies some pressure, and hopefully Biden does the right thing, but I won't hold my breath for that. All right, guys, that's the show. I love y'all very much. Thank you, as always, for listening to me. Everybody do me a big favor. Click the like button. Click the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 2 million subs now. We got a long way to go, but hey, 1 sub at a time, baby. That's how you build it. 1 sub at a time. So click that sub button. Click the bell icon, too, so you get a notification every time a video drops. You guys can listen to the full audio version of the podcast over on Spotify. Everybody go check that out if you don't want to go video for video on YouTube. And always remember, we deeply appreciate your support. If you can support the show on Patreon, you can support Krystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. And also, I think YouTube has a tipping feature now. I think it's the thanks button below if you want to tip a couple bucks or whatever. Remember, never had a conversation with an advertiser, never will. You guys make that happen. We like building stuff from the ground up, small dollar donations, things of that nature. So I love you guys. I'll talk to all of you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.